So we'll get started in just a few moments. And I mentioned we'll be on page 26 for those of you in the room, chanting the 5 remembrances. And for those online, Nick, who's been volunteering to do tech, is going to put that into the chat for all of the folks on Zoom now. And as you probably know, this is the week 5 of our 5-week class. We've been looking at the Buddha's teachings in regards to the gradual training, and makes sense, just like anything. If we were to be mentored by somebody for any craft, any skill, there'd be a gradual training. And we've been studying that using Lee Brasington's book. And so tonight, the culmination of the training, all the work we do to, in a grosser way, to align ourselves with the way it is so that we're harmonizing with the world, with nature, that it stabilizes our heart so we can do the one thing that actually liberates the heart, which is see things as they are. And a lot of the wisdom teachings, and I'll talk about this tonight after the meditation, but I just want to give a little background to the 5 remembrances, because a lot of the wisdom teachings, the teachings that support insight, right, because they're going to be conveyed with language. So on a conceptual level, like the 5 remembrances, they're ideas. But these wise ideas specifically challenge the conditioned habits, like the way we normally think about things. So now we have a different way to think about things, and it's like really useful medicine because it challenges the way we normally think about things. So when we reflect, I'm of the nature to grow old, it sort of challenges those ideas that that's something that happens to other people. I'm of the nature to sicken, because we don't, when we're healthy, we don't live each moment knowing that our health is vulnerable to change. And the same thing with loss and death. So these are reflections just to help us harmonize on a deeper level with the way it is, to come into alignment with the truth of the moment. So think of it in that way. And if you like this, the 5 recollections, the 5 subjects for frequent recollection, is sometimes what they're called, then you might just memorize them, or you can download yourself a copy. It's something that you can Google. It's very well-known teaching. So let's begin our sitting time with this. Now that we have it in front of us, I'll ring the bell 3 times just to give us a chance to collect ourselves. Buddha's 5 subjects for frequent recollection. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. I am the owner of my heir to my karma, born of my karma, by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, or for ill, of that I will be the heir. Thus we should frequently recollect. And we'll settle into our meditation time now. And keeping with this theme of using contemplations to help counter the way our mind has been conditioned to understand things, we'll go through the suggested contemplations that one finds in the Buddha's talk on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And we'll be using some of the ways to do these contemplations that Bhikkhu Analayo recommends, this German monk. So let's just begin by being open in a kind way to this experience of embodiment here. And you can just remind yourself, in terms of aligning with the truth of the moment, one of the basic ways to come into alignment is simply to remember there is a body, or there is this experience now of embodiment. It's really amazing that we live much of our life unaware that there is a body. So lost in thought, so caught up, that we forget there is a body. There is this experience of embodiment here and now. So as we continue with this meditation, just keeping this simple truth, this obvious truth, keeping it in mind as best we can, starting over as often as we need to. There is a body. There is this breathing, sitting body here. And we don't need to reestablish some mental image of the body or some idea of the body, but just that more direct, felt sense. There is a body. And depending on how we've been conditioned, we have all sorts of habitual ideas of my body here. Some of us might be disgusted, have negative feelings about the body. Some of us might be enchanted with our body. But really, it's just flesh, skin, bones. Right on the surface, there's skin, some nails, but mostly just skin. And then underneath, there's flesh, soft stuff, juicy stuff, and then the bones. So we can just contemplate that for a few minutes. You can coordinate that maybe with a simple body scan. You're just going down from the top, through the body to the bottom, to the feet. And just remember the simple truth, there is skin. There is what's on the surface. The hair of the body, the hair of the head, and the skin, the nails. Just feeling down a few times from the top to the bottom, acknowledging the truth of skin. And under the skin, there is flesh, which we can sense to some degree. So again, just a simple body scan, feeling the head, sensing the juicy stuff inside the skin of the head. And in the arms, the flesh of the arms, sensing the flesh of the torso, all the muscles, the fluids, the organs, and the pelvis, buttocks, and both legs down to the feet. Flesh. Maybe do it once or twice more on your own. Scan down through the body, just sensing flesh. Simple truth. And then do it with the bones. Just noticing what's hard. The skull, the teeth, the jawbone, the vertebrae as you go down the spine, the collarbones, shoulders, bones of the arms, bones of the fingers, the big hip bones, pelvis, sits bones, bones of the legs, the knees, the bone at the heels, bones in the feet. A couple times just scanning through the body just as best you can, sensing your bones. And then a little bit more quickly, just scanning down, simply acknowledging the skin, what's on the surface. And then the flesh. There is flesh. And then the bones of the body. This is true not just for our body, all those around us, all the folks on Zoom. The fact that I have skin, flesh and bones, very similar to the skin, flesh and bones of everybody else. And the other contemplation from the Buddha's discourse on the four foundations of mindfulness is to reflect, to contemplate the elements, just a way to sense or to get to know bodily sensation in a more impersonal way. Like to, again, we can move the awareness from the top to the bottom of the body and just noticing what at the time of the Buddha they called the earth elements. So the hardness, the experience of hardness and softness and roughness and smoothness and heaviness and lightness. These are considered the qualities of earth in that old traditional formulation. So just move down from the head to the feet slowly, just noticing just earthy elements like any experience of hardness or softness or roughness or smoothness or heaviness or lightness. And do that a few times at your own pace. So we're just learning to interpret sensation in this traditional way. So when we feel our hand resting on our thigh, for example, is that the experience of hardness or heaviness? What's that experience, that sensation? We feel the sits bones against the chair or the cushion. And all the other sensations, even the clothes touching the skin. Is that smooth? Is it light? Is it heavy? And then the other element is the fire element, which is just temperature. So when you're ready to move on, then just again, a few scans of the body at your own pace. Just be aware, be interested in any experience of coolness or warmth. And look everywhere, as you move down from the top of the head, you feel the hair at the head, top of the head. Is there warmth there or coolness there? And just continue down, tuning into temperature. Where's her coolness? Where's their heat? You can find temperature really everywhere you look. It's one of the basic elements of our physical experience. It's not personal to me or to you. The next element is the air element, which is what they call the experience of pressure and movement. So pressure is that static experience. Something wants to move but isn't moving. Even that sense of the spine's uprightness, being held in the upright posture, is partly the air element. That supported uprightness. And the other aspect of the air element is where there's distinct movement, motion. So again, just start at the top, find your own way down through the body, curious about the air element. Any sense of pressure, supporting, movement. So we're retraining the mind how to be aware of the body. Now we're learning how to be aware of the body in terms of these 4 categories of sensation. Earthiness, temperature, movement, and the pressure when there's sense of movement but it's being restricted. And then the 4th is the water element, and this is a little bit more subtle. So one aspect of moisture is how it coheres, how it brings together or unifies experience. So as we move the awareness down through the body, just that sense of unification, how all of these different aspects of sensation tend to belong together, make sense together, cohere together. Some translations, they talk about the water element as cohesion. So don't worry if that's a bit obscure as you move down through the body a few times. But just how natural it is to feel this ocean of sensation in a unified way. As if all the sensations are together, belonging together. Interdependent. This is the water element. And for just another minute or so, just aware of the body, the great ocean movement of sensation here in the body. But not in terms of me or my body, but just in terms of these four aspects of sensation. There's always temperature. There's always those earthy qualities of hardness and softness, rough and smooth and heavy and light. There's air, the pressure, the movement. And there's that coherence, that cohesion. This is body. And the Buddha offered one more contemplation with the body, traditional contemplation. And there are different ways to do this. But let's just begin again, feeling the breath in the body. Just noticing the changing nature of the breath. Without us doing anything, the breath just comes in. And then at some point, the breath simply goes out. And so just noticing how the in-breath begins, suddenly arises on its own, and then that in-breath eventually ceases. It just ends. And then out of nowhere almost, the out-breath begins, and then it ceases, it ends. And we don't even know if this particular in-breath or out-breath is our last in-breath or out-breath. We don't actually know. But we do know it's one breath closer to our last breath. So just be present with the natural rhythm of breathing. You don't have to control it. Fortunately, the body can just breathe on its own. It doesn't require mental control. And just sense the changing nature. Each breath arises and ceases. And at some point, the breath will cease altogether. And just keeping that in mind for a few minutes as we observe this process of breathing. In another way, the Buddha recommends we contemplate the impermanent nature of something even more significant than the breath, although more subtle. So we're just sitting, feeling the body sitting, the sensations of the body, and any other qualities that are here in our experience. In one particular aspect of the mind we call Vedana, this affective flavor of pleasantness or unpleasantness or neutrality. And the Buddha discovered that with every experience, whether it's a mental experience or physical experience, but what arises with every experience is just some sense of its pleasantness, its unpleasantness, or its neutrality, depending on the particular experience. So just see for a few minutes if you can train your heart to be attuned to the pleasantness and unpleasantness and neutrality of everything that arises, but just only really caring about whatever's predominant in any given moment. Then instead of noticing the in-breath, just notice whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Or if there's a sound, instead of noticing the hearing of the sound, notice if the sound is experienced as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Or maybe you feel some pain in the body. Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And as if you're observing the Vedana, that affective flavor, and in particular noticing its changing nature. It doesn't really last very long. But observe that directly if you can. So it's subtle. Like if there's pain in the body, we're not actually looking at the painful sensation itself, but that it's what arises with the sensation is that mental quality that it's painful. It's like related to the perception of it. Or maybe you feel the breeze against the skin, and maybe that's somewhat pleasant. And notice the pleasantness of it. And sense how insubstantial and changing that quality of Vedana is. Not much of anything, actually, when you get interested in it. So we'll have a few moments of silence. Just do the best you can with this more subtle work. Again, whatever's arising is okay. Whatever your mind is knowing is fine. But just be interested. You can even ask if you need something more concrete. Just ask, is this pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? In other words, do we want it to last because it's pleasant? Do we want to get rid of it because it's unpleasant? Or is our tendency to ignore it because it's neither pleasant nor unpleasant? Neutral. For just another minute or two. And take a little time, stretch your legs, stretch the body as you need to. Again, those were some of the reflections, meditations taken from the Buddha's discourse on the four foundations or the four establishments of mindfulness. Very famous discourse, the Satipatthana Sutta, it's called. So welcome everyone. Glad that you're here for the last night of our course on the gradual training. And a lot of you know Shelley is going to be starting the second part of the Fall Buddhist Studies program in 2 weeks. So the 20th of October, going for 5 weeks and covering the Eightfold Path. So similar territory, but a different framework. And I'll just briefly mention it at the very end tonight. Also want to mention before I get into the talk, a lot of you know this, but it's just good for all of us who are taking the class and just participating at the center. One of the central teaching, definitely part of the gradual training, is the training on generosity. It is, as a lot of you know from your own experience, it is one of the easiest and most direct way to feel good about ourselves and good about life is the cultivation of generosity. Some of you know they've done in just maybe the last 20 years, really this new subset of Western psychology around the science of happiness. And they found how whatever our particular set point is, you know, that's a term that has come up in that field, it's really resilient. Like if we tend to be a relatively unhappy person, that way of me reporting how I'm doing, like relatively unhappy, it's really stable. You know, I could have a good week at work or a bad week at work, but people tend to report their level of happiness in a very stable way, the same sort of level. Very few things change it. I mean, there's some movement, but it's kind of people's happiness set point, pretty resilient. Although there are a few things that will really change your set point. And that is, one of them they found that through research is when people give, not because they've been manipulated to give, but when they choose to give freely, or any other sort of like altruistic behavior that they've chosen to do, then like before they didn't do it and then they started doing it, that will change someone's set point of happiness, like how they perceive their level of happiness. So, I mean, if that's actually true, because we do crazy things to be happy. I mean, think about like recently I watched way too much of a particular show, like one episode after another, presumably to be happy. I don't think I was trying to be unhappy doing it, or, eating too much, or, I mean, how many things we've done to be happy. So if there's actual science that tells us this will make you happy, it's funny how resistant we are. Just to sort of, what would that look like in our lives? I mean, I'm just a tiny thing, but I'm not that affectionate in terms of, just generally, in my personality. But, I'm a good observer, and I know exactly what my cat wants, just from observation, like the kind of, he doesn't want a lot of affection, but he does like to be touched in just a particular way for a particular amount of time. And I notice I do that because it feels good to be generous. I show up and I give him the kind of contact he wants, not the kind of contact I want, but the kind of contact he wants for the amount of time he wants, in just the way he wants. And just that little thing feels good. It's a cause for happiness in my life. Or any number of other ways that we can just get involved with this dependable way to increase our level of happiness. So, that's part of the reason from the beginning that Common Ground just has offered everything freely. So it gives you one more place to just practice giving freely and receiving freely and letting that be a cause for happiness. And the only thing that's required is like participation, like just not how you do it, because there's no right or wrong way to do it. A lot of people have very little money in their lives. So it's not about how much people give. It's about getting in that circle of when you're receiving something, like in your relationship to Common Ground, to be aware that you're receiving something and let it be a cause for happiness. And when you're giving something, you come early and you help set up, or like Nick signed up to help with technology, and John for the class, but it's not enough just to do something generous. You really want to notice the giving. You have to be aware of it. Like before you give, while you're giving, and after you give, it's actually something you want to contemplate. Oh yeah, that feels good to have offered that. That feels good. And there's probably countless ways in your life that you're giving. So to make it, to really make it a spiritual contemplation, to see for yourself, does this lead to more happiness? So, usually once during a course, I just remind people to come into relationship with what's happening here, any way you want. I just see if by being more aware of what you're receiving and more aware of what you're giving, can it be a real cause for happiness in your life? And it really is a thing of beauty. I mean, this place was just a greasy 1950s diner when we bought it back in 2006. And there was no garden whatsoever. It was all parking lot. The whole yard was just all asphalt. So we, dug up 2/3 of the yard, and a lot of sweat and blood by community members. And we hired one of our community members to be the construction manager. And he spent 2+ years of his life living and breathing in this place as we gutted it and rebuilt it. And basically the same thing happened at the retreat center out, 83 miles east of here in western Wisconsin, and they're just, for me, they're monuments of generosity. It's not like they're huge donors at Common Ground, but little by little, these things have happened. All the things people do to make this place happen. It's just amazing. So you want to feel that when you receive something, you're really receiving the generosity. And it's not just people specifically involved at Common Ground, but all of the generations of people from all corners really of the world who have kept these teachings alive. Mostly the monastics, the nuns and monks and monasteries for so much of the last 2,600 years, keeping the teachings alive so that we can benefit from them today. Because, it's an old thing. 2,600 years, is a long time in human history. Plenty of time for something to have been completely forgotten. So anyway, that's just a reminder for all of us to not neglect that, not because we need money, because we're doing okay, because of people coming into a relationship. I'm bringing it up because it's like it makes this community strong when we keep it in mind. And it will make our world a better place when we start taking this understanding of dana everywhere else in our lives, not just in terms of your relationship to the center, but your relationship to your children, even your relationship to your job. It all can get transformed by this freely giving and freely receiving and letting it be a cause for happiness. If we're going to go to work, why not see it, instead of seeing it as a ball and chain, why not see it as an act of generosity? And when you get your paycheck, why not see it as an act of generosity? How nice it is to have this support. And of course, just contact the center if you have any questions about that, about how we operate. There's information on the website too. And Nick will put something into the chat for those people who might want to support the center sooner than later. But you can always go to the website for that. And there's bowls and Square Reader out in the lobby here for people. So we've been looking at the gradual training, beginning with, I'll just read from the cover of Lee Brazenton's book, right? In order to start the path, we need to hear the Dharma. We have to hear something that's different than we've heard before, catches our attention, makes us want to check it out. And it's that famous Zen story about the teacher pouring his student some tea, and he just keeps pouring, right? And the cup overflows, and the students go, "What the hell are you doing?" And the teacher makes the point, well, it's the same sort of thing, you have to be empty. You have to be willing to listen. And so we need to hear the Dharma. Then we need to gain confidence in what we're hearing. We need to commit to practice. The first step in committing to practice is often like changing our life. So we commit to the training precepts. Okay? I can't just be an animal taking what I can take, using whatever power I have to get what I want. Take advantage in any way I can take advantage. So we start to develop some commitment to non-harming. Guarding the senses, cultivation of mindfulness, learning to be content with what we have, recognizing the hindrances. What is it that hinders the stability of present moment awareness? Learning how to stop feeding those tendencies in the mind, cultivate other qualities so that we can develop the jhanas, or deeper states, more stable states of present moment awareness, concentrated mind, a mind that is collected, gathered, instead of a mind that's dissipated and scattered, not good for much. One of the adjectives that is used, like a mind that's wieldy. I remember like when I first read that word, like, because we don't use that a lot in English, the word wieldy, but it's like the mind that can do what it needs to do. It's nimble in that way. It has the capacity, the competence, the skill to do what a mind needs to do. What does a mind need to do? Well, besides sort of navigating life, as a spiritual being, the mind needs to see what it's not seeing, right? It has to comprehend and see what it has yet to see and comprehend. And part of delusion, ignorance, is thinking we're already seeing and comprehending everything there is to see and comprehend. Don't we move through life that way? I mean, it's astounding how pervasive that idea is. No, I get it. And we do this a lot. Like when a friend is saying, have you noticed this? Our instinct before even really hearing what they're saying is, oh yeah, I get it. And then we're desperately listening as they're talking about it to figure out what they're talking about. Because we've already committed that, no, I know what you're talking about. Oh yeah, I know that movie. I know that book. Oh yeah, I've seen that over there a couple blocks away. What did you think of it? It's like deceit. But the thing is, we're sort of deceiving ourselves too. We sort of do feel like, I probably do know that. I just don't know that I know that. So I'll just tell them I know that. So all that is that kind of delusion. And the thing about concentration practice, as you know, it's not an end in itself. As beautiful as it is, as healing as it is, it's really onward leading, right? We're cultivating a mind that can actually see things as they are. And the metaphor, one of the metaphors that's used in the tradition is a honed and heavy axe, right? Like as a tool. For that axe to be useful, it needs sharpness. That's the wisdom piece. But the samadhi piece, the concentration piece, is the heft, is the weight of the axe. Because if you had something really sharp, like a razor blade, it's sharp, but it's not going to be good for cutting down a tree, even if it's a big razor blade, right? It just doesn't have the heft. But if you combine sharpness with weight, then that's a pretty good tool. And so that's a nice image. I like that image for why concentration, a unified mind, a stable mind, a mind that isn't wavering, a mind that can be right in the middle. And that's what we feel like. One of the qualities of a concentrated mind is there's a sense, and some of you know this from your meditation practice, like at the end of the sit and the bell rings, and there's just this felt sense, even viscerally, so both mentally and physically, there's this felt sense of not wanting to move. It's not like you're actually being held by the concentration, but there's that, you could call it a contentedness, but it's deeper, it's more subtle than that. It's really getting expressed. It's like some people, like even in one of Thich Nhat Hanh's songs that they chant or sing at Plum Village and the other monasteries in that tradition, they talk about, I am solid. I think it's, I am solid, I am firm. But there's that, like that, we normally don't think of those words in terms of our Dharma, our Buddhist practice. That there really is that stability, that solidity. It's just not solidity in the sort of normal sense, but there's like the mind's capacity to be right here, unwavering, not dissipated. That allows, it's that mind that can see things just as they are. And the other thing, because it's a wholesome, pleasant state, concentration, then that mind, when it is observing sensation in the body or observing thought in the mind or observing whatever is arising in the moment, it's like it has a much more independent relationship to the different phenomena coming and going, because it's already, in a sense, whole or complete or content in itself. So then its relationship to other phenomena, it's like, I'm not looking to that sound to make me happy. I'm not looking to my bodily sensations to make me happy or as a threat, because there's some sense of okayness just from the unification of the mind, the non-fragmentation of the mind. And this is really important, and it goes right to the deepest aspect of the teachings, because the awakening process itself has to be a natural process. It isn't because there's somebody who's brilliant and finally figures out the truth of the way it is, right? No, the awakening process is a natural process, so that the mind that understands, the mind that sees what it hasn't seen before, that arises naturally, organically, when the supports are there. So in one of the suttas, when one's mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, right? Unshakable, not confused by what arises. And even if something arises that hasn't been seen before, okay, this is something arising here, and I don't know what it is, right? Because the mind is, there's that, just even on a more ordinary level, there's a lot of immunity we get from contentment, just on an ordinary level. You know how it is, like if we're feeling, if for whatever reasons, a series of things happen in a particular day, and it really triggers a lot of our insecurity, right? Then we have very little of that stability. So then whatever happens for the remainder of the day, it's going to trigger a lot in us because we're already out of balance because so much insecurity, we're desperately looking for some ground. But if we've had one good thing after another happen, and we're feeling really good about ourselves, and there's a lot of inner contentedness, then we'll have a lot of immunity to bad things happening. Well, yeah, I'm okay with that. I can handle that, right? Because we got this reservoir of feeling good. Well, this just happens in a deeper way as our practice continues, with the deepening of samadhi. I just wanted to read a little bit from Lee's chapter on insight practice. He writes, the purpose of jhanas is to generate a mind that will turbocharge your insight practice. Normally, when we look at the world, we're looking at it from an egocentric perspective. It looks like the world revolves around me. If I go outside and I turn in a circle, the world just revolves around me, obviously, right? That the world revolves around me, as it turns out, is not really the case. If you truly want to see what's going on, it's much better to look at the world from a less egocentric perspective. Normally, we're looking at the world in terms of, can I eat that? Will it eat me? Okay, we do get a little bit more sophisticated, but is this something I want to get? Is this something I need to push away? Am I going to get it? Am I going to push it away? I am is at the center of it. If I'm examining the world from an egocentric place, with me at the center, it's less likely that I will see what's really happening, because it turns out the world doesn't really revolve around any of us. Once you have a mind that is concentrated, normal ego functioning quiets down. You are so focused on the primary object that there is no bandwidth left over for ego construction. Right? So that's part of the quietness. It's like a lot of the ego construction comes because the mind is identified with a sense of lack. Something's missing, or danger. Something's going to get me. But when we're feeling whole, because of the samadhi, one of the flavors, the affective flavor, emotional flavor of samadhi is we feel whole or full or complete. It's a really nice feeling when we have samadhi, when there's that collected, gathered. And we know that. Mostly we know it because we know when we're not there. We know that experience quite well. Like like I mentioned, when a lot of things have happened that have triggered deep pain and insecurity, right? We're like falling down a well, trying to get a handhold, and not being able to grab anything. Desperate, right? That doesn't mean it's on the surface, but just below the surface, By the way, do you guys like me? I mean, it's like that's everything has that flavor of like needing to impress. We see this, with some of our leaders, just the the sort of deep, painful neediness getting expressed in such public ways, or even celebrities sometimes. And it's so unusual when there are people that are just so comfortable in their skin and so already whole that when we interact with them, there's no sense of them needing anything from the interaction. They're a joy to be around, you know, because it actually feels like when they're interested in us, it's not like some manipulative thing, like I'm going to be interested in you, so you'll be interested in me. Yeah, we feel that way sometimes when we're interacting with someone. It's almost like we're watching the clock. Okay, I need this person to listen to me, so I'm going to give them a few more minutes, and then it's going to be my turn, you know. And it's just so interesting to catch that going on in our mind, that sort of business sort of, except it's the thing that makes it a little even more neurotic is that we're not honest with each other about that. I mean, one thing is I need some of your time tonight, and I'm willing to give you some time, but let's negotiate, you know, how much time I need and how much time you need for me. Let's just be clear about it. Let me just finish this paragraph. It's like your ego goes and sits in the corner for a while and quits coloring everything you're experiencing, you know, when you have samadhi. Then you can see the world from a less egocentric perspective, which is going to give you a much better chance of seeing what's really happening. It's often talked about knowing and seeing things as they are. Yata bhuta jnana dasana, right? Seeing things as they are. That's the Pali. But that translation is a little too static. It would be better to translate this as knowing and seeing what's actually happening, because it's a happening world, not a static one. And you want to see what's actually happening in order to make progress on the spiritual path. And so that's, you know, like sometimes people wonder, well, should I do concentration practice or should I do wisdom insight practice? You know, generally they're working hand in hand. But when we can't see, when the mind isn't interested in seeing clearly, doesn't have the sort of sense of curiosity, doesn't have the kind of, you know, when we're really settled, everything is sort of interesting. But when we're not settled, when my mind's hungry for needy, then it can be torturous to have to wait. But in another moment, you know, waiting is a delight. It's like the wind is blowing through the leaves, or we're just feeling our body, or just, you know, it's just like that's, there's a famous sort of line in the tradition, you know, if you're bored, you're not paying attention. You're not able to pay attention. So the sutta continues, one understands thus, right? So one directs and inclines the mind to knowing and seeing things as they are, right? That's what we do out of concentration. So when we can't, when the mind isn't capable, interested in doing that, then we do what we can to build a concentration. And if we can't even sit, aren't even capable of building concentration, then we might need to go work on our life, right? We might have too much remorse. There might be too many things haunting us. Like I haven't cleaned my kitchen and my bathroom in 6 months. And I sit and all I'm doing is, you know, as soon as I get settled, I realize all the things I've neglected. So we might have to get up and make amends, you know, like they do in the 12-step program. What step is it where you make amends? Anybody remember? What is it? The 4th step? Yeah. Anyway, one of the steps is you make amends, and it's sort of like, because to do the deeper healing, if we have all that unfinished business that is already calling for attention, we have to deal with that. Whatever that unfinished business looks like, we're the only ones who will really, truly know it. And then maybe we're able to sit without being haunted by what's unfinished in our lives and our relationships. And then we've got the tools that we talked about last week in particular about settling the mind down. Like Shelley talked about how we recognize the hindrances and stop feeding them and maybe get better at starving them so that they fall away, and cultivating the wholesome. And then as we get to know just the cause and effect of what helps the mind to gather, like it matters what we pay attention to. I could be sitting, and I could be fretting about the pain in my knee or about all kinds of worries that I might have, but that doesn't support the mind gathering. What supports the mind gathering? Well, it's the continuity of present moment awareness, right? So it's like whatever arises, to see it as something being known, something being known. Whether it's the breath, we're using a primary meditation object, or whatever happens to be predominant moment by moment. But it's that continuity of present moment awareness that is the proximate cause for concentration. And then once the concentration is stable and we let it spread and we let it have its positive effect on the mind and body, we feel safe, we feel gathered, we feel whole and content. Then we direct the attention to seeing clearly the way it is. And there's a number of ways to do that. I covered some of them in the guided meditation, like looking at the body in new ways. So we got some instructions from our teacher, like instead of thinking about the body in the ways that we've been conditioned to think about the body, right? We can think about the body as flesh, skin, and bones, right? That strips away a lot of conditioning, and it's hard to argue with. It is skin, flesh, and bones, it's like, just to think about how much, like in terms of what causes us to fret and worry, a lot of it has to do with our bodies, in comparison to other bodies, and what's attractive and what's not attractive, and all of that kind of stuff. When we realize it's just skin, flesh, and bones, it just simplifies things in a profound way. And even more simple than skin, flesh, and bones, it's just sensations that are of hardness and softness and roughness and smoothness and heaviness and lightness and coolness and warmth and pressure and movement and this cohesion, this kind of cohesive quality, or the absence of it. And that's kind of it. And it's not like my array of sensations is really unique or uniquely different than yours. You know what heaviness is. Your experience of heaviness or lightness is not so different than mine. But we don't think that way. It's like you're in your own personal orbit and I'm in my own personal orbit, and they're completely unique and different. This is the kind of conditioning we have. So it begins to, these reflections challenge fixed ways of framing and understanding. One of the most important ways that we transform our understanding is the Buddhist teachings around the Four Noble Truths. And remember, the Four Noble Truths, it sounds like philosophy or some dogma, but it's a teaching that is really aimed at what's actually already the most interesting thing for our mind: suffering and the end of suffering, stress and its release. This is already, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, in a way, it's already the governing principle of our mind. This is what our mind cares about. It's what's driving everything anyway, but we're just not sort of clear about it. So the Four Noble Truths and the teachings around the Four Noble Truths, it's just making it really clear so we can align with that conditioning. We do care about stress and release. And so we make that front and center. This is a text from the Buddha. with a concentrated mind, one directs it and inclines it to the knowledge of the destructions of the intoxicants. That's an interesting word, asavas. Some of you have heard that word. It gets translated as intoxicants, fermentations, outflows, inflows, floods. These are the different ways that it's been translated. And so usually there are three floods or three intoxicants. Desiring sense experience, desiring to become somebody, to be somebody. You could say even desiring existence, but it's really more about that becoming energy, wanting to become somebody, be somebody. And then ignorance is the third flood. So this is what sweeps our mind away, the kind of common off-ramps. And it's actually from the term, like the secretion from a plant. And I think it also refers to like the pus from an infected wound, like when that seeps out. So that's the idea. So the destruction of the intoxicants, right? So this is what you do with a stable mind. You get interested in suffering and the end of suffering. And you're going right to the root cause, right? Which are these intoxicant, these tendencies for the mind that is stable and feeling whole to get entangled in ways that lead to the mind feeling not whole, right? Because that's how it is. It's like we actually get in nice places sometimes, whether it's in a meditation or just because of circumstances in life, and we feel pretty good, right? The heart feels whole, we feel loved, feel like we belong. And then what happens? Right? Somehow there's an outflow. The mind gets involved in some fermenting process that creates noxious gas. And then we're, spun about. One understands as it really is. This is what we do, right? When we study the intoxicants, oh, this is dukkha. This is how dukkha comes to be. This is how dukkha ceases. One understands how it really is. These are the intoxicants, right? The fermentations, the outflows. This is how they arise. This is how they cease. This is the path of practice leading to the cessation of the intoxicants. Knowing and seeing thus, one's mind is liberated from the intoxicant of sense desire, the intoxicant of becoming, and the intoxicant of ignorance. So this is what the Buddha said about it. This is what we do with whatever concentration, whatever stability, continuity of present moment awareness we're able to develop in our lives, in a sit or just in daily life. Then even as we're doing what needs to be done, we're looking, right, at the intoxicants in order to see, oh, this is it. This is an intoxicant. This is a cause for suffering. This is how it arises. This is how it ceases. It's not even so much that we're getting in there and making it arise or making it cease. We're just observing what's already happening. The causes for suffering are already showing up. And then they are already ceasing. Right? Because otherwise we just be building suffering and then adding more, right? But that's not how it is for us, is it? Sometimes it really peaks and we're really, really miserable. We feel really trapped. We're in a really dark place, heavy place. And then it changes. And then it keeps changing. The only thing that's missing is what the Buddha is suggesting we do, which is to use whatever stability of awareness we have to see when it's arising, that it's arising, to see the lawfulness of the arising when things are getting more heavy, more dark, more hard to bear. Can we observe that as a natural process, meaning there are supporting causes? What are those supporting causes is my mind specifically involved with? Like the mind is doing it. That would be good to know, wouldn't it? Some of those things, the causes may be what we would consider external, but not all of them. And even the ones that are external, like somebody is looking at me funny, my way of perceiving the way that person is looking at me is my contribution to it. So it isn't just that there's nothing that is entirely external, because the perception of what's external is here and now in the mind. And there's any number of ways to perceive somebody rolling their eyes at us or swearing at us or doing whatever they're doing to us. There isn't just one way to understand that experience. Right? Like I could have a vast perspective and understand, well, they're probably having a really bad day and maybe they're having a really bad life. And they're probably miserable. And I don't know all that's moving in their life. And that all of a sudden changes how we relate, how we respond to whatever they might be putting out toward us. So these teachings on the Four Noble Truths, we really have to come into a personal relationship with that. So don't worry if the teachings on the Four Noble Truths feel a little, dogmatic or, too structured or too philosophical or whatever. But the basic mechanism, the gradual training is to realize there's something we're not seeing, right? And then I need to stabilize my life so I can really see what I'm not seeing. And what I need to see that I'm not seeing has to do with suffering, how it arises, and how it ceases. That's what we're going to be the best student we can be around how, and not theoretically and not in terms of other people, but right here. How does this heart get heavy? How does this heart get light? And it begins like right from the start. The teacher, when we hear the teachings, the basic teaching is, hey, buddy, you live in a lawful universe. Suffering and the cessation of suffering is a lawful arising, meaning it can be comprehended. And the supporting causes for it arising and the supporting causes for its cessation can be comprehended. And then you'll be able to participate in the ceasing of suffering instead of a victim of the arising of suffering. And the Buddha, in the tradition at least, we never know like if these are later additions, but what they did so the Four Noble Truths are, there is suffering, it arises lawfully, there's a cause for it. It also ceases lawfully, there is cessation, and there's a way of living, a path. This is what Shelley's going to talk about in the next Buddhist Studies, this Eightfold Path. There is a way to live that supports the deeper realization of the cessation of suffering. So it's like an ancient medical diagnosis. Oh, there's dukkha, you got dukkha. Oh, here's the cause for it. No, there is a way, there is healing available. There is cessation. And here's the treatment plan. So there comes this, the way the Buddha talked about it is from that ancient sort of medical way of thinking about things. And then embedded in each of those four trainings, really, they're not philosophical truths, there are insights that we have. So like even the first one, there is dukkha. It might just seem, okay, I get that. Let's move on to the second one. But it's like we have to develop our relationship to dukkha. So maybe we're all at that first insight, like that we have a pretty honest sense there is dukkha here in my life. Because not everybody has that. That doesn't mean they're not suffering, but they haven't honestly acknowledged, oh, I'm suffering. Because that's a powerful step, actually, because it's a first, like, I'm not going to lie to myself. I'm suffering. I'm hurting. And there's some humility close to that acknowledgement that I'm a suffering being. It's not a bad way when you see, we don't really do that, but if we haven't seen somebody, I came early to help set up, and people from Nancy's yoga class were here, and there was somebody who I went to school with from first grade to eighth grade in North Minneapolis, where I grew up. She was here with her sister, who lives just down the street, who's been a community member for a long time. So it was fun to see them. I'm not sure why that was relevant. I'm sure it was somewhere. But, just in terms of cultivating this relationship with dukkha, we want to understand, oh yeah, there is dukkha, and it's not irrelevant, it's relevant. It's like we're kind of, oh yeah, I remember now, it's like haven't seen her since eighth grade, but instead of the sort of that exchange of niceties, when, how are you doing? An honest answer would be, you know what? There's suffering right here in this life. I'm a suffering being. How about you? How are you doing? Because that's really true. Whatever that is, like I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of financial insecurity, or I'm afraid of death. My relationship with my partner's gone stale. I don't know what to do. It's like, these are truths. My body hurts, my knee, my back hurts. And not to just complain, but just to realize that, it isn't easy being a human being. Because we can kind of meet there. Isn't that true? It isn't easy being a human being. It isn't. And so this is that second step, like there is dukkha. The second insight is, you know what? This is fundamentally relevant, not philosophically, but actually, it's fundamentally relevant. It just needs to be right at the center of things. I don't want to forget this truth that there is dukkha. And it's like, I sometimes joke, like, what are we willing to get down on our knees? Like in Theravada Buddhism, we kneel down and you put your hands on, then you put your forehead down. And that's like the traditional bow, Although you're kneeling, you're not sitting cross-legged usually. And I sometimes jokingly say, what are we willing, even as Westerners, what are we willing to get down on our knees and put our hands on the floor and put our forehead down for? What are we willing to submit to? Oh, dukkha, I don't want to forget you. You're my teacher. And then after that, like when we really integrated that, there is dukkha, you're my teacher, and we've developed this really sincere, ongoing relationship, then we have that third insight, which is dukkha has been understood. I'm no longer deceiving myself. I'm not lying to myself about it. I see it where it is. I see it how it is. No spin. Then you've accomplished the first 3 out of the 12 insights. And it sets up the next 3. Because when we have an honest, deep relationship with dukkha, then we know it's lawful. It arises lawfully. There's a cause. There are causes for it. And that is attachment to desire, or misunderstanding desire, or craving, grasping. And then the second insight is this grasping, this attachment to desire, identification with desire, confusion with desire, it should be abandoned. It's not helping anybody. It's not me trying to abandon it. It's that insight, seeing that, oh, this is the cause for suffering, it hurts. This should be abandoned, right? It's an insight. We're really seeing that this is unnecessary. This is unhelpful. And then the third insight in that second truth is it has been abandoned. Now, this is where we spend a lot of our practice time, because it's hard. It just feels there's so much conditioning that we have to get identified with desire. Like we have the desire to get into shape, to eat better, to go to bed earlier, to be a lot of good things that we can get attached to. we feel justified in the attachments that I'm going to once and for all get my life together. I'm going to become a good person. You'll see. And but when we observe that, like we see, oh, this is the cause. It's that it's not exercising that's a cause for suffering. It's the identification, right, with the desire. So all of a sudden I set myself up. If I succeed with that desire, then I become special, personally special, which is also stressful, by the way, right? And if I don't succeed, then I become not special. I become bad, you know. But it sets us up to suffer. Not whether we exercise or don't, that we do or don't exercise, but the attachment to the desire is the cause. So first we have to see that because we are in honest relationship with dukkha, we're going to see, oh, this is always there. When there's suffering, there is attachment. So this is what we can do in our lives. Is that actually true for us? When I'm hurting, when you're hurting next, feeling heavy, feeling burdened by life, then ask yourself, is there any attachment to desire? Is there any identification? Is the mind part clinging in some way? What's it clinging to? What is it attached to or identified with? Oh, okay. So maybe the attachment is extra, not the desire. Desire is like, comes with life. There's nothing wrong with desire. It's what the mind does with the desire that causes the problem. It's the misunderstanding of desire. Of course, some desires are related to things that will, be wholesome, and others' desires are not wholesome. But the problem is what the mind takes the desire to be. If we think the desire is me, we're going to suffer. So even really wholesome desires, like to be awakened, to be fully awakened, liberated human being, right? That's definitely a way to suffer. So there is suffering. It should be understood. It has been understood. There is a cause for suffering, attachment to desire. It should be abandoned. It has been abandoned. Now, the abandoning of the attachment to desire happens because of this, which is not me letting go of the identification. It's me seeing that the identification or the attachment to desire should be abandoned. So we have to, this is where the great, great patience is required. We catch our mind being attached, being identified, in all the ways our mind gets attached and identified, clings and grasps. And we do our job as a, devoted student to the Buddhist teachings. Oh, this should be abandoned. This isn't helping. This hurts. This is the cause for suffering. We really see the unnecessariness, the harmfulness of it, and that supports the letting go. As long as we think I should let go, we're not really seeing dukkha and its cause. Because we don't actually cling. Clinging is a natural phenomena. Letting go is a natural phenomena. Clinging arises when the mind doesn't see clearly. Letting go happens when the mind sees clearly. It's really that simple. So as long as I'm thinking I should let go, I'm not seeing clearly, so letting go is not going to happen. Letting go happens when the mind sees everything as a natural process. That the clinging to this desire is happening because I think it's me. So if I think I shouldn't be clinging, that's also happening because I think it's me or mine. Right? It's just another desire that I'm identified with. Now I'm identified with the desire of being the one who should let go. But it's the same game, which is the cause for suffering. This is really hard because it requires, like, when we start to get some sense of what the Buddha is pointing to, we just want to go do it from this egoic place. And it's really frustrating because it never works. And it seems like it is sort of working, but then we always screw it up. So we have to get really interested in, like, not just suffering, but in the intricacies of really seeing the clinging. Oh yeah, this is not helping. This attachment, this identification. When there's this heaviness in my heart, this squeeze in my heart, this burden in my heart. It should be abandoned. And then that sets up the really life-changing insights, which is the third noble truth. There is cessation. This experience of cessation should be deeply realized. It has been deeply realized. So these are life-changing insights when we experience this minus the sense of self. Right? We're not, the mind isn't projecting or establishing an experiencer. There's experience without a somebody whose own, without that sense of ownership. And this happens organically, right? It's helpful to understand it philosophically, but it only is impactful. We're not changed until it happens in this kind of direct way, where there is dukkha, should be understood, it has been understood. Oh, look at, when there's this attachment to desire, there is this suffering. Oh, this should be abandoned. Oh, look at, it ceased. Just by being patient with the unpleasant truth, this is extra, this is unnecessary, this hurts. Without judging it, without forcing anything, there's a letting go. And when that is fully realized, then we see the world with new eyes. We see everything happening without a center, without me at the center. And even with, initially it's just little brief openings, but even so, they're very impactful. And then we really understand why the path works, the fourth noble truth. There is a path, it should be developed, it has been developed. And we're really basically using wisdom and awareness, present moment awareness, to purify all of our relationships, to purify the mind, to purify the most subtle aspect of the mind, the view, the understanding in the mind, by just observing dukkha, causes for it, and the cessation of it, right? We're just doing it in all three frequencies of our life. The sort of grosser part of our life, with the relational world that we're part of, in terms of how we relate to our mental activities, emotional activities, and how we relate to the most subtle part of the mind, the view or understanding of our mind. And this is insight practice. So again, insight practice is simply a mind that is stable enough, healthy enough, together enough to be interested in suffering and the end of suffering. What the mind is already interested in. Because this is sort of, what is compassion? Compassion is a mind, it is that quality that cares about suffering and the end of suffering. Right? So this is really the marriage of wisdom and compassion right there. So we develop how much, what can we do to stabilize our lives, to have enough safety so we can be interested in what the mind is actually naturally, organically interested in, out of compassion, suffering and the end of suffering. And our whole life is our laboratory at that point, right? It isn't so much about just sitting. We sit because the good qualities that get strengthened when we sit, like calm, tranquility, stillness, it just supports the investigation all day long. That's why we sit. And that's also why we develop sila, more and more, following, deepening our understanding of the precepts around non-harming, because it just creates more stability, more safety, more of that stability of awareness, so we can see, oh, there is dukkha, there is a cause, it does cease. There is a way to live that develops that experience of cessation, living a life with more moments without anything extra. And it's like that, those experiences we have when we're playing or playing sports or making love or doing whatever we do, where it's just for moments at a time. We've all touched into those times where everything is just happening on its own. And the mind isn't neurotically projecting a self in the middle of it. And this place can be lived. We can live out of this place. So I need to leave it here. It's 9 o'clock. Appreciate people sticking with the class. Wishing you good luck with your practice. I did send an email out today reminding folks about Carlos and Rafi are going to be leading a practice period for all the people in this course and the next Buddhist Studies course that want to just go out to the retreat center for a few days, the 27th of November until Sunday. So it's Thanksgiving evening until Sunday after Thanksgiving. So those 4 days or 3.5 days. And Rafi.
We're going to be going there, but if anybody wants to show up on Friday.
Yeah, so you can come Thursday night or Friday night after Thanksgiving. And there's lots of information online. The link is there, but it's also on our calendar. You can sign up or just contact Gabe in the office if you have any questions for that. And then I mentioned Shelley's course is beginning in 2 weeks. So register for that if you'd like. And lots of other things coming up, including the year-end retreat. The registration will be coming out pretty shortly. Think about joining in for that. I know Shelley and Gabe are going to teach a workshop on media, how to practice in our information world, media world. And then I'm going to lead a media fast for a week, the week after that. So that happens on November 15th. And so that week from November 15th to Sunday, the 23rd of November, now how you fast will be different, depending on your work life and your interest in going cold turkey or just modifying how you use media. So everybody gets to decide. But we're going to come back on the 23rd and I'll lead this. And we're just basically going to have a conversation together for anybody who does that media fast for the week about what you learned about your own causes for suffering. So please join in for that if that makes sense to you. And there's, of course, other things coming up too. Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you here.